So, we're not trying to pick on any specific group, but I thought this was interesting that their projections on labor force participation for those that are 16, people that are 16 years old and older, it's projected to decline over this decade. For those that are 16 to 24, same thing, projected to decline. For those between the age of 25 and 54, it's actually projected to hold steady. It's going to be about the same. The only group really that is expected to increase, as Trey mentioned, is those that are 75 and older. And they're not just expected to increase at like a small rate. They're expected to increase by like 96%. In fact, by 2030, right when we, at the end of the decade, all baby boomers will be at least 65 years old by then. But here's the thing. Those that are over 65, as Trey mentioned, like they're expected to make up about 10% of our labor force. We're talking about people in retirement who normally when you think of retirement, like that's when you're quitting your job. You're no longer working. But 10% of those people that are over the age of 65, 10% of our entire labor force will be made up of people that are in retirement. Wow. Supposedly. That's a huge number. And I don't think it's all just because people are bored or maybe, your spouse wants to get you out of the house. I think it also speaks to the growing need to make sure that you have enough to make sure you can make it to the end of retirement, because the last thing anybody needs, we had a client who said it perfectly. And I think this is somebody that you met with a couple of years ago talking about long-term care, where he said, I plan to have enough to make it into my 80s, right? I did everything I could to make sure that I have enough money to make it till I'm 85, right? But what if I live until age 90? What are the demands that's going to place on my children? And most people don't want to be a burden to their children. And not that he necessarily would, but most people would like to have enough resources and have the means to be able to take care of themselves without placing additional demands on the people that they love. And that's something that is very real and something that people need to consider, especially in terms of medical expenses and expenses related to long-term care.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that we're seeing, it's actually kind of fun. Obviously, this isn't available to everybody, but we're seeing more and more people that leave their job and then their company says, hey, we can't afford to lose you. Mm-hmm. And they're making just as much consulting 1099 for their company 28 hours a week or 25 hours a week as they made full-time. So one of the things I'd say is if you're in a position where your company has consultants and you want more of your time back and you're not ready to retire, but you still enjoy what you're doing, you should explore some of those options. I've met with so many people that we get to serve Yelisey that have said, man, if I knew I could have been consulting and making what I make now or close to what I make, I should have started this 3-4 years ago. So I think one of the things I encourage is you need to be aware of, are you in a position that your company can lose you, or do they want to fight for you? Because one of the things that you and I both know as business owners is it's really difficult to find people that are producers, people that do what they say they're going to do and that are proven. And there's a real cost for a company to lose a valuable employee where now they have to go try to hire somebody else. That first person may not work out. The second person may not work out. And companies are aware of that. So a lot of them, they're willing to pay key players to stay, even if it's part-time, even more than you're making. And one of the things I've found in my life is the power of the ask. Most people don't get what they deserve because they don't have the courage to ask for more. And so one of the things I would just encourage you, if you're listening and you've been with your company for a long time and you're considering retiring, think of a way to softly bring up, hey, if I retire in a year or 2 years, is there a need to keep me on part-time? And we have one client, Yelisey, that he was going to retire and his company gave him a 50% pay raise because they wanted him to stay and train in a couple of people for the next 3 years. Yeah. It was like, man, thank God I brought up that I was considering retiring, making the same amount. And, your company's not going to say anything about paying you more. But if you're thinking about retiring, find out what your options are. And obviously you have to be thoughtful on how you do it.
Yeah.